Okay, welcome back to our bounce tutorial. This one is part 2, so if you missed part 1, I suggest you go ahead and take a look. Right now we have already this animation created, and we're about to create the camera animation and tweak a little bit our materials, create the lightning, and so let's get started. So first things first, I would suggest that you organize your scene over here, your objects, sorry, your objects menu. So select all of them and just press Alt G, which is group. Okay, and let's rename this to something like text, and group as well your effectors, so Alt G group, and rename this effectors. Okay, so on the top circle over here, let's click once and twice so that we don't see all of these effectors on our viewport. We don't really need that. And that's it. So let's just close this text for now, and let's create a camera. So over here on camera, let's create a target camera, and let's click over here so that we see what our camera sees. And let's go ahead and jump into our last frame, and let's move the camera target a little bit so it sits somewhere in the middle of our object. Okay, now let's select the camera and choose the focal length from classic to something around wide angle, for example. Okay, now let's approach the camera a little bit, maybe in the right viewport or maybe in the top one. So in the top viewport, let's just approach the camera a little bit, like so, and let's just press play. Let's hit play and let's check our angle. Okay, so I would suggest that we move the camera target a little bit, like so. Okay, until we have our text right in the middle, somewhere like that. And let's go ahead into our final keyframe, our final frame, which is the 90th frame. And actually I'm going to increase a little bit our frame range, like so. Now we have 120 frames. So in our last frame, let's keyframe only the position, so make sure all of these are unchecked. Select your camera, and then in the last frame let's hit keyframe, and let's go into our first frame over here, and let's move this a little bit like so into the front, get the camera closer to the object, keyframe it once again, and let's take a look of what's okay, pretty good. Let's move our camera target so it kind of focuses a little bit on what's happening, like so. Okay, keyframe it once again, and now we'll change a little bit some stuff over here. So let's select our camera target, let's head into our final frame, like so, into our final frame, and let's move the camera target and keyframe it over here. Okay, once again our bounce animation is done, our camera animation is done, pretty much. Looking good. I'll maybe change the camera animation a little bit, so the camera position, I mean, so here I will change it to there, keyframe it in the 0 frame, frame number 0, first frame, anyway, and maybe in the first frame move it a little bit backwards, like so, Don't worry about this, we'll get to that later. And here we are. Once again, first frame, select the camera and move it a little bit like so. Keyframe. And let's take another look. Let's just move a little bit, and I'm sorry I don't have the recipe. I'm just, trying. This is a trial and error workflow, so I don't have all these values prepared for you guys, so just keep trying, to find the right balance. I guess it's pretty much okay, just a little bit over here and a little bit over there. Not too much to say about this. Maybe a little bit further away. Make sure you select your camera view. And I think it's okay. Alright, so select the camera and the camera target. Alt-G and rename your group to something like cam. Okay. Now I don't need to see this on the viewport right now, so I'm just gonna hide it like so. And let's go on and keep on going. So on the right viewport right here, I'm going to change it from right to perspective, and the display mode to something like constant shading and lines, I mean, this one over here. I don't need the wireframe, but actually I'm gonna select the wireframe. Okay. Moving on, let's create some lightning planes. So create a plane right here and set the width segments to 1, the height segments to 1, and let's just bring this up, make it shorter like so and longer like so, maybe a little bit like so. Okay, now go into more graph, select cloner, bring the plane inside the cloner, and now on the cloner we'll set the Y from 50 to 0, and the X, we're just going to increase this until we get to something we like so. Great. Increase the count to, I would say, 5 or maybe 6, and bring this until it's more or less centered with our scene. Then push it up like so, maybe not that much, like so. Okay, and let's call this top lights. Now I know this is not a light, this is a plane, but we're going to use a feature called global illumination, which is right here, global illumination. We'll get into that a little bit later. And so I'm going to create another material. I'm going to call this I don't know, whatever, luminance. Just choose whatever name you find useful for you, and in the basic tab of your material, uncheck everything except luminance and bring it all over into the plane or into the cloner. It doesn't really matter, it's the same. So right now what happens is that these top bars over here, top lights, will have this really bright white light, okay? But anyway, right now, for you guys to understand, there is no light being transmitted from these planes, right? That's a little bit later. Okay, now let's go into our materials our text materials, which are these three, and let's hit reflection on our basic tab. Reflection, go into reflection, let's get into texture and hit Fresnel. Okay. Now Fresnel has these two important values over here. Not that the others aren't important, but for now, for what we're about to do, these are both of these are the ones that we are interested. So turn on the mix strength a little bit, and this is the fall-off. Okay, this is the mix strength of the fall-off. If you set this to 0, the fall-off doesn't even exist. And this is the brightness. This is the overall reflection. Okay, so think of it like this. First, you have this brightness. Okay, as you set it from 0 to 100, everything will reflect from 0 to 100%. And then you have this fall-off. As you increase this value, you'll see that the center of the sphere, or wherever polygon that's facing towards the camera, will start to be less reflective until it is at 100%. And at 100%, the polygons that are facing the camera, like this example over here, they don't reflect anything. And the polygons not facing the camera, they do reflect. So as long how to say this, the less turned to the camera the polygons are, the more reflective they get. Okay, so and then you have to mix both of them. So if you turn down this, the fall off, you start to see what's beneath, and this brightness over here is beneath 100%. So we can just tweak a little bit these values, and with experience you start to understand how this works. But anyway, let's just set this to 24% and this to, I don't know, maybe 40 or 47, maybe 50. We'll change these parameters later, probably, or maybe not, I don't know. But for now, this looks okay. So I'm turning this on because right now I want to see the reflections of the materials. And you can see right here, there are some reflections going on. Not pretty, they're not really that pretty, as you can see. But we'll get there. These are reflecting, this text is reflecting these top lights. Okay, the top lights are not illuminating anything right now, but they are being reflected because this is geometry right here. This is planes, so this is geometry, and the text is reflecting the objects right there. So now let's add another object, another plane. Let's set the width segments to 1 and the height segments to 1 as well. Let's scale this up. So shortcut for the scale is T. Okay, on your keyboard. Let's set this like so, and let's bring this luminance over here. Okay, now if you hit a quick render, you'll see this. Okay, this means everything is going okay, and you kind of see these reflections going on down here. This is reflecting this plane over here, but yes, we don't want this where it is, so let's just move it up over here. Shortcut E, as you can see there. Okay, so R for rotation, T for scale, and E for move. Let's move this up a little bit, maybe more, like so. And now let's create a null object. Let's call this null object plane 1, whatever. Let's bring this plane over here, and if you select this null object over here and if you rotate it, you will rotate the plane, and this is a small, small kind of speeding workflows process, whatever that I use, is I create the plane, push it up a little bit, put it inside of a null object, and then when I rotate the object, it will always rotate around the object I want it to affect. Okay. Now the purpose of this is two things. First of all, illuminate the scene, which right now is not happening because we didn't activate global illumination yet. We'll go there in a minute. And the second one is to reflect. Okay, so if you add a reflection to anything, whatever object you have on scene, if you don't add objects around it, it has nothing to reflect, so it won't make any difference. But right now we have some objects around it, white objects actually, like so. These are white, okay, and you see some reflections going on, which is due to these objects around it. So let's get going, and let's concentrate a little bit on our on the view from our camera. So right here, let's select the viewport and let's activate interactive render region. Okay, so this opens up this square thing around here. Let's just bring this up. Okay, and this arrow here represents the quality of the render. So if this arrow is right here in the bottom, the render will look crappy. If you raise this arrow until the middle, it will look kind of bad. If you raise this to the top, it will look way better. And what we are aiming right now is to, sorry, undo that. I don't want to move this. So make sure you have your plane selected. And what we're aiming right now is to move this plane around and try to get some nice reflections over here. And because this is almost white, we don't see that much, but we can see a little small tiny line over there. I don't know if you can see it because, you know, YouTube videos always have some compression and you might have some quality loss. But anyway, to help me see better, and for now I'm going to select our materials and just bring this way up and the Fresnel way down. So now maybe not so much, so reduce a little bit. This is temporarily, okay? This is just to see the reflections a little bit better, as we can see it right here. Okay, so now my goal is to make this plane, which is reflected right here, the bright part, to be around I would say like from here to there, okay, to give us that shiny good look. And to do that, I just need to rotate this a little bit. As you can see, here's our reflected plane, and I need to try here and there, you know, rotate this a little bit, and this might take a while, but I'm just rotating the plane a little bit and looking at the reflection until I get the reflection I want. And actually, let me jump into the last frame. This will be my you know, my goal is the reflection to fit on my last frame. So I'm just moving this around slightly and trying to find the perfect spot for my reflection to be. Now once again, I don't want the reflection to cover all my surface. I just want it to be, you know, you'll see in a minute. So again, this might take a while. I'll try to be as fast as I can, but you know, this is the way it is. Always takes a little bit of time, just rotating here and there. Sometimes I have to scale this or maybe approach this to the center, like so. It will make the reflection a little bit bigger. And select again the plane, rotate it, and just keep moving up. You know, with practice you will do this faster. Okay, there it is. This is the line that I want. And I hope you guys understand what I'm doing, or why am I doing this. So this is kind of the effect that I want. Maybe this line could be a little less, how do you say, you'll see what I mean. So now I'm going to select the plane and just rotate it a little bit, like so. Let me show you over here. So this is where I want it, but now let me just rotate this a little bit, like so. And I'm always looking at here to see the result. Okay, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. Maybe scale this up like so a little bit and rotate it a tiny bit, and like so. And this looks pretty decent for now. Okay. I'm not going to change the reflections right now, because this is not the way we want the reflections to be. I just pumped this up so we could have a clear view of what we're doing. But right now I'm about to duplicate this plane over here, this object. So now we have plane 2. Let me just rename this. And now we rotate this to get some reflections over here on the bottom. Okay, so once again, rotate over here. Just choose whatever view you prefer to rotate your object, like so. And now we have some reflections on the bottom. Let me just show you guys what's happening here. Okay, so now we have some reflections on the bottom because basically our camera is around here somewhere, and this is reflecting this, which is what we want, like so. A little bit, can move it a little bit backwards, or you know, just try out and see what better suits you. I'll try not to waste too much time over here with this. Maybe we can just animate stuff a little bit and see how it looks. I know it still looks crappy, but we'll go get into that a little bit later. Okay, like so. We have some reflections going on. Okay, pretty decent. So let's go ahead and correct our reflection in order to be a little bit better, like so. Remember, I still have this interactive render region active on my viewports, on my camera viewports. So to make sure that I'm on the right place, I come here to camera, use camera, make sure that my camera here is checked. So it is checked, great. Now I can just tweak this a little bit. Still changing the reflections of all my materials together, and it looks pretty decent. Okay, once again, okay. Now another thing that I just noticed and I would like to change is the timing of our animation, of our bounce animation, I mean the front animation. So let's go ahead and just change that real quick. Go into effectors, and in front animation, let's select this, all of the keyframes, and put them a little bit later. And this is, there's no right or wrong here. I just want things to have a little bit more, you know, as long as if you have moving stuff around, it works. Okay, and let's just check here. Let's unactivate the interactive render region, and let me just, let's select the front objects. Okay, so the front text, push it a little bit backwards, just a little bit, just like so. Okay, pretty good. Let me just check if here everything looks good. And in the back, object, let's increase a little bit the radius of our caps. So as I said before, I don't have a recipe already made for you guys, so that's why here and there I'll just tweaks things a little bit so everything kind of fits together, and maybe later on I will change that again. So I'm sorry about that. That's the way I do things. Okay, looking good, but we still don't have lights. I mean, you see things, so there are lights. And basically you see things because if you don't have any lights on your objects menu, if you didn't create any lights, there's an option over here. If you go to render settings and options, there's an option over here which says something like auto lights, default light. This is it. And what this does is the software Cinema 4D automatically creates lights for you so you can see what's going on. Because if there are no lights in the scene whatsoever, you would see pure black. Just imagine yourself going inside a room with no windows and there are no lights. What do you see? Nothing. But this software, as most of them, it helps us to see things, so it creates lights. Let's just uncheck this and make a render. And voila, we see the red parts over here a little bit better because they have luminance, and the luminance is like a self-illumination feature of our material. If I uncheck luminance for a minute, you'll see that it kind of disappears, and because you see this because it has luminance as well, and you see this reflections because there are the reflections of the luminance. But basically, bottom of line is there are no lights. Okay, so let's create some lights, or let's create some lightning, but before that let's just keep organizing stuff. So this is the lightning objects over here, although once again they are not lights, but they are meant to light and reflect, so, and create reflections. So let's select them, Alt G, and let's group them into something called lightning. Okay, lightning. Yeah, great. And we're going to create a tag. So go into tags, make sure your object is selected, go into tags, Cinema 4D tags, and compositing. And with this tag selected, go into the tag tab and uncheck scene by camera, and right now they disappear. Okay, great, this is what we want. And let's create a background. So to create a background, go over here and create a background. Background over there. Great. Let's create another material. Let's name it background. Over here in our material editor, I like to do this, which is right click on top of this sphere right here and set this to plane. Well, this doesn't really do anything. It only changes the way you see the material, and because I want to add a gradient over here, so let's go into color, texture, and let's select gradient. It's easier for me to see this in a plane instead of a sphere, because I'm not actually going to use this material in something that looks like a sphere, but something that really looks like a plane, which is the background. So let's keep editing this material. Color, okay, we have our gradient. Let's hit over here, one click, and that's done. Hit into type and choose circular. Okay. Let's change some colors. So the middle one, I would choose something like a dark red, and on the outer color, let's choose something like an even darker red, like so. Let's bring this color into the background. Okay, now we're having something. We have the background, we have the reflections, we have the materials, but we still don't have any lights. And we can achieve that just by creating an effect called global illumination. and voila, we have some lightning. And I'm not going to talk I'm not going to talk a lot about global illumination right now. You have hundreds of tutorials about this feature over here. Basically, let me just try to make explain this really fast. Global illumination basically is calculating the luminance of the objects and calculating the light that these objects transmit, because they have this luminance checked, and the lights hit the objects, okay, and they even hit the objects and they reflect, okay. Never mind, I'll probably make a tutorial only about global illumination right now, but to keep things a little bit simpler, I'm just going to skip this part. So make sure your global illumination is set on, and where it says diffuse depth, let's increase this to 2, and this will brighten up our scene a little bit more. And on primary intensity, because our scene still looks a little bit dark for me, let's increase this to 200, so it will look a little bit brighter. And maybe even increase the diffuse depth to 3. Okay, and the secondary intensity to 150. As I'm pumping these values up, I'm increasing the lightning of this scene. Okay. Right now, I feel that these reflections over here are too strong, so let's come over here. Close this menu for now. Let's come over to the reflection of all of our materials over here, and just bring this brightness a little bit down and this a little bit down until it feels kind of right. And okay, so now I'm going to edit the reflection of each single material, because this is reflecting too much, the white is reflecting not enough, so right now it's better for us to change our materials individually. Okay, so we're in the blue. Let's reduce a little bit over here. This is a fall off. Okay, the Fresnel, sorry. Let's reduce the Fresnel a little bit, like so. And as you can see, these reflections kind of fade out a little bit as I decrease these values over here. Once again, this is a matter of trial and error, but right now it seems a little bit okay, maybe just a little bit more. Okay. One quick tip before we go on. Let's go back into our global illumination tab over here, and let's go into sampling, and where it says samples, let's set this to low, and this will make our render a little bit faster. Okay, doing good. Let's go into our glowing, or maybe our this is not right, let's call this white. Let's call this white, and let's just bump this brightness a little bit up. So I would like to see this a little bit better, and this is looking pretty decent. Okay, and let's go back into our first frame, and let's just check how it looks from a random frame, like so. We have these neat reflections over here and there, so things are looking pretty good, I guess. Looking good. Let me just try to make a small adjustment over here on our text. It's looking pretty dull, pretty numb. So let's go into our back object, into caps. Let's just try something different, like linear, convex, concave, off circle, one step, engraved. Let's try the engraved. might work. It might work, but actually I still prefer that convex, so let's leave it like that. Okay, and the front I'm going to try, I'm trying to make this a little bit thicker, so over here in front caps, make it a little bit larger, so 7 centimeters radius on the front and on the back, so it kind of looks a little bit larger, and it looks good from here. Okay, let me just bring this a little bit closer to the other object. So let's head into our top view. Let's just bring this up a little bit closer and just click and drag a little bit the object to the back so it kind of fits better inside there. Okay, now this is looking good. I'll probably make an how do you say, a preview animation just to check the animation. So and I'm going to correct this right now. This is probably due to the back effector, so the plane effector we created previously. So let's go ahead and uncheck the delay effector for now and deactivate the interactive render region. Okay, and let's take another look. Okay, this is without the delay, looks pretty ugly. In our first frame, let's just move this a little bit to the left until it disappears, like so, and keyframe that. Okay, looking good, looking good. With the delay effector on, let's head into our first frame, and we have our bouncing text, and that thing over there is gone. Okay, let's just close this for now, and let's make a small test animation. So uncheck save. Here am I back in render settings, so uncheck save, go into output, make sure you have lock ratio on, and go into your width and select something smaller like 800 for example. Uncheck global illumination, and actually we probably need to check once again the default light. Right now I'm not really concerned about the overall quality, I'm just concerned about the animation and the timing and all that stuff. So let's uncheck reflection as well. We don't need reflections right now, and this is all in the object options menu on the render settings. So another thing, in output let's set the frame range to all frames. Okay, so we're going to render all frames with this size just for preview, so smaller than the original size, with no reflection and with the default settings, default light on, with no global illumination, and that's it. Okay, so let's just hit this middle button over here. It asks me if I'm sure, if I don't want to save. I'm sure I don't want to save. This is just the preview. And as you can see, the render is really fast. I'm actually using a MacBook Pro 13 inch screen. I'm not sure about the processor, but it's not one of the most recent ones. It's not too much of a great computer over here. It's very good one, you know, but it does the job over here. And we're almost done, so pretty fast. Each frame took around 1 second, so great, and it looks good, looking pretty good. Okay, I think I'm probably way too close to the objects right here, so I'm going to change this right now. So let's take a look at the camera. Make sure we're looking at what the camera sees, which is checked. Okay, great. And let's Let's open up this menu over here, select the camera, go over here to our first frame. Let's look for a different angle over there and just push this a little bit backwards. Hit keyframe, select this viewport and press play. Okay, there's not that much camera movement on this axis, so just a tiny bit to the front. I'm probably going to end this with no Z animation, but that's okay. Looks pretty decent. Okay, so our materials are done, our background is okay, so let's go ahead and refine some details in our render settings. So global illumination is set to on. Let's set the anti-aliasing from geometry to best. Let's set the filter from cubic to a Gauss, which is made to animation. Let's go ahead into our output, and from all frames we're going to change the frame range to current frame. Let's change this again to full size, so 1280 by 720. Lock ratio still okay. Save is unchecked for now, it's great. Let's go ahead into options, activate the reflection once again, and unchecked the default light. So I'm back to where I was before, and let's just make a small render, or a still render. By this I mean only this frame, and as you can see this takes a little bit longer than our previous render because it has some more detail, anti-aliasing is up, global illumination is working, reflections are here, and it looks pretty good, I guess. It looks pretty decent, but there's something missing really important, and this is, let me just close this for now, it is the ambient occlusion. So go ahead in effect on your render settings, effect, add ambient occlusion. Okay, just by doing this we can see a pretty big difference over here. So it will take a little bit longer to render, certainly, but that's the cost of perfection. And the difference right now is that you have this kind of darker shading of kind of shadowing over here and there in the corners, on here on the areas that are receiving less light. It kind of adds some shadowing, which is good because it gives us more detail, even here and there. As you can see, this is our final render, or last render, and the previous one looks a little bit more how would you say, ugly maybe, and this one has more detail, has more shadows going on, so it looks a little bit better. Okay, so right now what I will do, I will change the colors a little bit here and there to make it look a little bit better. I don't think I'm going to do that right now because it always takes a little bit of time. I'm just going to add a little bit more reflection over here on our orange material. So just add a little bit more reflection, make another render, and I'm really not going to waste too much time on this because this is just a tutorial. You'll then choose whatever colors you like. And by the way, I hope you guys respond as a video response to these tutorials with your tutorial. I mean with your render. I thank all you guys that already did this with my previous tutorials. It's really good to see that you guys are enjoying these tutorials, and let me just say that, you know, if you want to change the colors, you can, and it's always good when you see different things going on. You know, you don't have to be, you know, so strict to choose the same colors I did, because, you know, honestly, I don't know if this is the best choice of colors. It really depends on taste and the subject. The colors should, you know, sit well together. And right now I see that this orange is really close to this background, so it doesn't look that good. And what we can do is to, I don't know, for example, make our background a little bit darker, and maybe bring this brightness a little bit up. And probably that's what we're about to do. So let's go ahead and color, and just, maybe this is too much, so sorry, color, and just bring this up a little bit. In luminance, make this a little bit reddish. Okay, and maybe bring this up a little bit, and render it once again. Let's close this because I forgot about the background. Let's make the background a little bit darker in the middle. Yes, okay, great. And we're pretty much done with this part, I guess. Once again, I would spend a little bit more time refining the materials here and there, but for the sake of this tutorial, I think this will do the trick. We have these fine details of our reflections, we have distinct colors, we have a background, and great. Now, usually I don't create these backgrounds over here. I like to create them in After Effects. But I don't think I'm going to bring this to After Effects right now. I think for this tutorial it's okay like this. It works good, looks good. And let's make our final render. So let's come over here, make sure you save your files. I'm going to save them as a PNG with 16 bits per channel. I don't need alpha channel because I have a background. I'm going to uncheck this, and don't need this as well. So let's just choose somewhere to save the render. So let's come over here, bounds tutorial. Let's create another folder called render, not render, but render. Okay, just rename your file, or name your file. Let's call it bounds. I like to leave an underscore in the end, just to make a separation from the name and the numbers that will be created automatically. And this is good. Output, make sure you have all frames. Okay. Multipass, we don't need that right now. Initializing looks okay for now. And this all looks good, I think. And let's maybe save this. So save. I already had saved once before. I advise you to, you know, save your works, save your projects often. And let's hit render, I guess. So let's do it. Okay. So right now it is rendering. It might take a while. You know, depending on what you're doing, you might want to increase this global illumination samples from low to medium, or maybe high. Because this is a tutorial, I'm just going to leave it at low. Another good tip is to go ahead in cache files and just click auto load over here and auto load over there. If you render this twice, it will make your renders faster. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much it. Let's just wait for the render. Okay guys, so seems like our render is done. Let me just check how long it took. So it took me about 1 hour and 17 minutes to achieve this. As you might see, there are some small glitches here and there, and that's obviously because I didn't set my global illumination settings to the top, but it seems fair, reasonable, really good for a tutorial. You can increase the render settings a little bit. It will take obviously more time for you to render, but for the sake of this tutorial I found it enough to do it like this. And you know what, I was looking at this and I was thinking that this could use some After Effects, so I'm going to make right now a part 3 where I'm going to open After Effects and just color correct this and give it a little bit more of nice good looking feel. So let's go.